Hello, everyone. This is Rosalind Sedacca, and you're listening to WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. And as you know, I'm founder of the Child-Centered Divorce Network, a divorce and co-parenting coach. And the focus of my work is helping parents make the best decisions regarding their children before, during, and long, long after divorce. So we talk a lot about co-parenting and relationship experiences and dating after divorce, and always being mindful of the well-being of the children. And as you know, I have guests who I am very impressed with, who have much to offer, and today is no different. I want to introduce you to Mark Entrekin. And Mark has a wonderful background as a speaker, an author, a professional coach, and the focus of his work is in helping people achieve unity around the world. He speaks and teaches about achieving unity around the world by caring, helping, and including others with the goal of ending anger, hate, and prejudice personally and professionally. So, Mark, that's quite a huge undertaking, and one that I have great respect for you for sticking in there, especially at a time like now when the world is finding itself filled with deepening anger, hate, and prejudice. And it is not good for most of the countries around the world to be in this position. But we're not going to talk about the world situation today. We're going to hone in to divorcing and parenting and co-parenting and relationships with our children, with our spouses, with other people in our families, so that we can help everyone have as smooth and positive an experience. So welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Rosalind. It's an honor to be here. Great to see you again, talk with you. And you made so many great statements. It is around the world, but we need to focus here first, focus on our own doorstep, and talk about what does impact us in our marriages and our relationships and what we can do to
Exactly.
achieve more.
Exactly. And I think one of the most ubiquitous emotions that we're all dealing with as a great challenge is anger. How to cope with our own personal anger, how to cope with the anger around us, how to cope with the anger from our former partner and our children as related to divorce. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what anger is and how it hurts the family dynamic?
Thank you again, Rosalind. That's a great way to start because many times people think of anger as a rage, and anger can develop into a rage, but sometimes anger is maybe even as minor as spilling coffee on your spouse's or your significant other's shirt or blouse. That's where anger can start. What we have to realize is there's a big difference between what happens for a little bit of anger because it does feed itself. And too many times that small anger, where it could be that small drip of coffee, it could be one person staying out too late, it can be a person that doesn't respond on a call when they go out somewhere and they don't let the other spouse know they're on their way home or they're going somewhere else. Anger is any situation where someone's expectations were not met. And that's sometimes as simple as it rains on our parades. There's no doubt we can go to a parade and sometimes it rains. We can prepare and bring an umbrella, but that expectation was still there. We have a parade scheduled. It's supposed to be a glorious day, but sometimes the weather does not go along with us, sometimes within our control, sometimes not. So anger is any area of our life where something doesn't happen according to our expectation.
And unfortunately, that's a huge part of anyone's life. Life
It
doesn't go textbook life. So life is going to be full of bumps and unexpected situations. And so coping with them puts us in touch with, do we get angry and what choice do we have in the matter? Because I firmly believe we have choice about all of the feelings and emotions we feel and express, and anger is no different. Is that correct?
That is so true because if we look at it though, when we become angry or someone else becomes angry, have we ever thrown a fit that anyone was ever impressed with? Because too many times that anger is only actions not gaining effective results. Anger, ANGER, actions not gaining effective results. So, what value is there in getting angry? Where do we bring a value back to us by throwing a fit or being upset? We don't. So, where is that value in anger? And instead of being anger, if we remain calm, we can cancel that anger leading motivation. CALM, calm. Cancel anger leads motivation. And that's what we need to think about because where is the value in any anger that we might express?
Yeah. Well, that certainly makes sense. Not as easy to do as it is to understand. But let
But
me
if we think about it,
go
go ahead.
ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if we think about it, when we get angry or when we feel anger coming on, if we could just think for a second, and you're right, Rosalind, it's not easy because we've learned to be angry over the years through our culture, through our learning. But if we just think about it, where is the value in any anger that we may portray on anyone else?
So I want to ask you about another term another emotion that's very strong that comes up in all of us, and that's hatred. And sometimes it's directly connected to anger. We're angry it's about something, and so we start hating the people who are involved in that situation with us. And of course, when we're talking about divorce and co-parenting, it's easy to get angry and it's easy to feel a lot of hatred when we feel we've been wronged, when things aren't going our way. So tell us about hatred.
Hate is very dangerous, and that is such a strong emotion that we hold onto because hate is nothing more than having accelerated troubled expectations. HATE, having accelerated troubled expectations. When we hate something, we're expecting something, and our expectations, again, are not good. So we learn to hate and we hold on to it for, again, absolutely no value. Why do we hate? Where did we learn to hate? We talk about our kids when they're 2, 3 years old, they're young, they just want to be around others. They want to play, they want to have fun. Oh, sure, Johnny won't like it if Sammy takes his toy or Janie takes a toy from Susie. But the bottom line is they learn to hate. We learn to hate, and hate does us no value. So instead of having hate, we can learn to have help. HELP, having excellent leadership plans. Like you said earlier, Rosalind, it's not easy, but if we start thinking about it, what kind of plan can we put together instead of having hate? Where does the hate bring value? It doesn't.
It
So
does.
instead, if we can just plan on something, plan on being a bit happier and accepting what happens and not being expecting of something negative, wouldn't that help us a little bit?
Yeah, I think what happens is that we pick up a lot of those negative emotions from our childhood experiences, from parents who didn't know any better and instilled anger and hatred and prejudice in us, and all of these emotions blow up, and so it's all we know, and people don't stop to question. It's wonderful that you have those terms so that you can get an idea that there's other choices all the time, but we don't usually stop and think before we act that there may be other choices and other ways of feeling. So I wanted to ask you a question that I think is very important, and that is, why do you think the majority of people believe that hate, anger, and prejudice are okay?
Well, Rosalind, that's an excellent question because I hate. I've hated. I learned to hate. I learned about anger growing up. Now, my parents were awesome. They were married the whole time. I knew them from the time I was born until they passed. They were great parents, loving parents. But there was some hate within them. There was some hate within my friends. There was some hate within the community. There's definitely hate on television. So, one of the things that comes about is we have learned hate. And in that learning, we have learned incorrectly that it is okay. We've learned that it's okay to hate. It's okay to hate someone. And hate can also build onto prejudices. And I speak on that as well because hate doesn't do us any value, just like anger. Where can we gain anything from hating someone or hating a situation? If we just helped with those leadership plans, we would be so much further ahead. But I think, as you're mentioning, Rosalind, we didn't think about this at the time. I didn't think about it. This is something that I learned because of things that happened in my life going forward.
Yeah. So here we are, parents, and we're watching our children we love, going to school and having experiences and new relationships and friends. And they experience bullying and they experience things that are unfair because that happens in life. And they are disappointed when they don't get a good grade on a test or whatever the situation is. So these are all experiences that can be very negative and hurtful for children. How do parents explore this topic with their children and give them the resilience to overcome anger and hate and prejudice?
That's again one of those situations that we have to learn how to handle it. I went through what I call one of those horrendous divorces. My divorce went through the time when they were always thinking about fathers were deadbeat dads. That was the quote at the time. And our legal system, our judicial system picked up on that. So it was a harder fight for a lot of people. And at that time, a lot of fathers. It was a situation where we didn't think about the long term effect on what was going on. So we have to be able to talk with our children. And when they say they hate something or when something goes wrong, ask where's the value? Where is the value in how we exercise the emotion that we're about to express? I wish someone would have asked me this. And again, I loved my parents. They were awesome parents. They didn't know to ask that because they too had learned about hate. They too had learned about anger. They too had learned about prejudice. And we learn it and then we think it's normal or natural and don't question it. The first thing that we need to do is question it amongst our friends, amongst our family, amongst the people on the street. It's one of the things I'm talking about in my newsletter that comes out on Thursday. It's one of those situations that we have got to learn to control our emotions. There are choices. Everything that we do, from anger to hate to prejudice, those are choices that we make. We must choose to not do them and let things go because they're not going to help us now or help us later. So, as you're asking, what do parents do now? Ask ourselves, what is the next step that I am going to make, going to do to benefit me or my family going forward? And if we just ask that, where's the value? I think we'd all rethink our day to day process and then be able to slowly eliminate any hate, anger, and prejudice going forward. What do you think?
Well, I think that's definitely the goal and the right direction for us. I'm curious though as to how we can differentiate between the being triggered into emotions which sort of overwhelm us and they transcend conscious decisions. We get triggered, we suddenly are feeling things versus making the conscious decisions when they're more intellectual. So they're coming from another part of our minds where we're saying we're stopping and we're saying I don't have to fall into that. Even if I'm feeling this, it's not serving me in any way. But that's a deep intellectual place to go. And when you're feeling anger, there's nothing to stop us from just reacting. And what I talk to clients a lot about is the difference between acting and reacting, making a decision that's mindful versus just blowing up and feeling the emotions. So that, I think, is a problem for a lot of people. Is that right?
I agree with you so much. And I have a course starting October 8th. And we go through a lot of this because isn't every emotion that we have learned? Doesn't it come from our culture, our parents, our friends, the news, social media? What we see on TV, our candidates on TV that are running for election, all of them, not just the president. How much negativity do we see coming across the TV every day? If
Yeah.
we would just learn that we are in control of that, and even though some of the audience may expect us to use cuss words or to be vulgar or to be mad, instead, if we could just think it through and say, I don't have to do that. I am who I am, and I don't have to be rated by other people or their actions. And if they want me to be mad, I can control that. That is a learned response, just like you're talking about act or react. Everything we do is a learned response when our emotions come forward. And there's so many things such as race, creed, color, any of the prejudices that you see, and there are a lot more than people even think about. Those are learned emotions, and we can control them and we can eliminate them going forward.
And we have to catch them first in ourselves so that they don't become passed along to our children unconsciously. And I think that happens a lot because
Good point.
we have our prejudices. They're passed along by our parents and our families and our experiences we have. And then suddenly we're a parent and we innately just pass along beliefs and values traits that we give to other groups of people. And this goes along from generation to generation, and it needs to stop with us. And everything starts with mindfulness, mindful awareness, to understand that we always have choices in life. I think that's one of the most profound pieces of awareness that most people don't have, most adults do not have, is the fact that we really do have choices in every decision we make. It may not feel like that at the time, but if we just stop and ask ourselves the kind of questions you're talking about,
Yes.
we then can discover there is another way, or I don't have to just run on automatic and believe that or say that or do that. And when we stop, we find the world is bigger and greater for us in having options. But my parents didn't tell me that. I had to learn and absorb that through years and years of trial and error to realize the fact that understanding the fact that we have choices and need to make conscious choices, especially when we're a parent, makes a huge difference in the outcome of our lives and our children's lives, don't you think?
I so agree. And as you mentioned earlier, we want to look at our definitions, our understanding of these words, and we say we need to do something. It's more than that. It's a must accomplish situation. It's not something we need to do. It's something we must do going forward. It's not something I want to try to change. I can try to lift the Empire State Building. Will not get me anywhere. Whenever we try, we want to make sure that trying means part of it's done. I'm trying to move a rock across the room. Well, have I moved it any at all? If I'm going to dig a hole, have I dug any at all? If I'm going to build a building, have I laid the first brick? That's where trying must be, because you must have some percentage of completion to be trying. We have to define our actions and show that we are accomplishing what we want to accomplish. These are some of the things, as you mentioned, that I coach on to help people understand that there are emotions that we are in control of, how trying impacts us, what we need to do, and what we must do. Some people also say, well, I should do that. What does should do for us? Nothing. It's got to be a must. It's got to be a decision for our emotions, our ability to take it to that next step or that next level.
Got it. So before we go any further, I want to make sure our listeners get an opportunity to find you. So can you tell us where you are and how people can access your wisdom?
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. The best way to get a hold of me is by email, and that's mark@markentrikin.com. You can reach my website at achievingunity.com, or as you can see on the screen, my phone number is 303-362-8733. And that phone number stands for 303 Focused, FOCUSCD. We must be focused on our decisions to take them to that next level of success.
Well, that's wonderful. And that's a great phone number to have
Thank you.
because you're absolutely right about the focus. Let me just give you a minute to leave us a last impression and a thought that we can take with us to contemplate as a result of this conversation we've been having.
Rosalind, thank you so much. Because I would, if we have just about 60 seconds, just touch a little bit on prejudice. Because we know prejudice today is always negative. It's a negative word. But prejudice today means more like poor reactions, echoing jealousy, and undermined delivery of an immature, cruel ego. That's how prejudice is spelled, Prejudice, poor reactions, echoing jealousy, and undermined delivery of an immature and cruel ego. But yet, we can turn prejudice to stand for positive reactions, echoing justice, and understanding delivered inclusion by creating excellence. So I create these acronyms to help us understand and build and utilize and remember them going forward. So this is not just something I'm saying. I don't want to just say this. I want to use it myself, share it with others, and help us all build forward so we can stop hate, anger, and prejudice for ourselves, our family, and all of our community going forward so we can end this. The world can be a better place. And I hope you and I can work together to help us get there.
Well, I feel like we're kindred spirits and your message is so profoundly important today. So thank you so much for
Thank you,
sharing with
Rosalind.
Mark Entrekin. And I hope you'll listeners will follow up with Mark and take advantage of the programs that he offers. I want to thank you all for joining us today. We're at Divorce, Dating, and Empowered Living on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. And I hope you'll join us again and visit the Child Centered Divorce Network at childcentereddivorce.com to get access to my ebooks, e-courses, and programs, and one-on-one coaching nationally and internationally. So until next time, thank you all. And thank you, Mark. Been a pleasure talking with you.
It's been a pleasure myself, Rosalind. Thank you for the time to be here, and you have a wonderful audience. And your website, excellent.
Well, thank you so much. Till next time, everyone. Bye-bye for now.